This is pretty cool. I feel the entrepreneurial buzz here. And as I was driving out here, I formulated the question in my brain of what this talk would be about. And the question was, what did I wish I knew when I was 21 in university, about to start my first company? And I'm going to take you to not my first company, one of my next, and my latest company 13 years ago. We started Nurse Next Door, my partner and I. And has anybody seen the pink cars?
Yeah.
Right, so most people have seen the pink cars. So 13 years ago, we had this personal experience of caregiving for family members. And Ken and I had no idea about anything about healthcare, anything about home care, but we were passionate about it. And we saw this industry that we knew needed bold change in the industry. So we thought we can do it. So we started out in a Starbucks. We bought 2 cell phones. The Starbucks in Kerrisdale was our head office for 6 months. We hired 3 caregivers. And we were one of those companies we were one of those rocket ships. We started out at a Starbucks, and 4 years later, we had a $25 million a year business. And that was all organic growth. We didn't go acquire companies. We went from scratch, from 0 to 25 million. And so that's fast growth. If you haven't learned that yet, the Inc. 500 is the fastest growing companies in America list. We were Canadian, so we couldn't be on the list. We would have been number 3 on the list that year. That's how fast we were growing. And as students about to start a company, you're probably thinking, man, I want to do that. I want to be that $25 million company. And it was a wild ride to the top, but I can tell you this. Going from 0 to 25, we were 2 entrepreneurs. We weren't managers, we weren't leaders, we didn't have systems. We hit that $25 million mark. And we were getting sort of really known in Canada because of our success. We were winning lots of awards and we were doing really well, but our company wasn't very pretty on the inside. So these are smart cars. We used to have smart cars. We now have, I think, 200 cars across North America that are pink. We used to have smart cars. Now, if you've ever driven a smart car, they start shaking at about 60 kilometers now. So we don't drive them anymore. But at that time, at that year 4, Ken and I were driving this car. It was like 160 miles an hour, and it was falling apart. So our company, the wheels were falling off the smart car, and we were doing everything we possibly could to just hang on for dear life. And I remember the day, it was July 16th. I won't get too much into the story, but I hadn't been to the office in about 2 weeks. Things were falling apart. We were fighting fires. It was disaster mode. We were losing clients. And I walked into the office, and we had about 30 people, 25, 26 people at head office. We had 1,000 people in the field, 1,000 caregivers taking care of seniors in their homes. And I walked in that morning, and it was damage control, firefighting. It was just chaos. And I remember listening and watching and hearing the conversations that were happening. And I realized I didn't want to be in my company anymore. I realized I hated my company. And I went to my partner, Ken. I said, we have to get out of here. And we went to a little coffee shop, and I looked at Ken and I said, this isn't what I intended to build. I don't want to work inside of my own company anymore. And Ken looked at me and he said, I don't either. And so here we were 2 entrepreneurs. We were successful, but we actually hated our own company. We didn't want to be there. What we had originally set out to build was far different than what we were at that year 4. And so we had a decision. We could have obviously sold, and we probably made a lot of money, but we never got into business, and we didn't become entrepreneurs to just sell out. We wanted to build something great, a legacy that would stand the test of time. So we had to come up with a plan. So we came up with a plan, walked back to the office, and listen, we're entrepreneurs, so it was, to make a change, it was either bold change or suffer a death by 1,000 paper cuts. And we're entrepreneurs, so we chose the bold change route. We went into the office, we fired 10 out of the 25 people right that afternoon. Just got rid of them. And got to the end of that day, not a pretty day. And it was just Ken and I in the office, 6 o'clock at night, just the 2 of us left. And when you build a company, you go on this big roller coaster of a ride. And we were at the bottom of the roller coaster at this point. I mean, our company was falling apart. Our customers didn't like us, our people didn't like us. It was just a bad spot to be in. And we didn't know what to do. So we did what I guess entrepreneurs are pretty good at. We set this bold goal, and we said, well, we don't really know what to do, but let's set a goal. Let's become the top 10 place to work in British Columbia in 4 years. And it was sort of a funny goal. We were probably the worst place to work in British Columbia that year. So it was a fairly audacious goal. We didn't know how to do it, but we learned something that night. And we learned this concept we call R&D. Can anybody guess what R&D stands for? Rip, off, and duplicate. See, we realized we weren't the smartest guys in the world, but we didn't have to be, because everything has been done to a world class already. All we had to do was go find what we needed to build. We had to find who did it the best, go to them, learn, bring it back home, and execute. So we spent the summer learning, and we became fastidious students of business, really. And we didn't hire a single person till we figured this out. We studied the best, most enduring brands in the world. So we went right back to Jim Collins. You guys read Jim Collins' Good to Great and his books, Built to Last? Good. So Jim Collins, these are 4 of his companies. These are like when we looked at what are the best, most enduringly great brands that have absolutely stood the test of time. These were 4 of them: Disney, Starbucks, Toyota, and Southwest Airlines. And we started to study these companies. Why were they so great? And it was interesting because all of them, they all had these amazing cultures. Their people were just dialed in a totally different way than any other company. I mean, you take a Southwest Airlines flight and they drink this Kool-Aid, right? They're just so dialed in and engaged to what that brand is about. And we realized that is one of the keys to building a great brand. And as we scratched below the surface of what made those cultures great, which obviously made those brands so great, it actually became fairly simple. It was classic Jim Collins. All of these companies and all of those good to great companies, they all shared one thing. Jim Collins calls it vision, the most misunderstood word in business. Core values, so how you do what you do. Core purpose, why you do what you do beyond just making money. And he calls it the envisioned future, we call it the painted picture, that crystal clear vision picture of the future. That's what made these companies great. That's what made them stand the test of time. So it was very simple for us. We took these learnings back to Nurse Next Door, and we stopped our growth. We said, we're going to stop, because we realized we didn't care about being a big company anymore. We wanted to be a great company. And if being a great company could actually make us a big company, then that's great. But we didn't care about being big anymore. We stopped our growth, and we started to rebuild Nurse Next Door literally from the ground up, brick by brick by brick, through core purpose, core values, and the painted picture. And an amazing thing happened. In 3 years, we were number 6 place to work in BC. And I always say, if you want to do something to excellence, it takes 3 years. You focus on something for 3 years, and you can be excellent at it. It took us 3 years to get to number 6, 5 years to get to number 1, 6 years to become the top culture in the country. We're always one of the top 10 employers in the country. And I think last year we were named the smartest company in Canada by Profit Magazine. So in that time frame, we went from this company of 25 million in sales and not very good. We now have almost 100 locations across North America. And this time we're great. We're building this greatness in an organization. So here is how we did it. Shouldn't have back up. You have 2 options as an entrepreneur on how you want to build your company. You can either build it by design or build it by default. By design, I mean you blueprint it, you architect, you craft, you build for greatness. You build a company that is going to have that endurance, it's going to have that resilience to stand the test of time, right? You build a great company, not just a great product and service. Or you build it by default. By default, I mean you build a product or you build a service, and it's built around you as the entrepreneur. And if you build that way, you can be successful. But chances are you probably won't be. There's a reason why only 4% of companies get to $1 million in sales, 0.4% get to 10 million in sales, and the numbers drop precipitously from there. Because most companies are built by default. Just like Ken and I built our company in the first 4 years, we had a company built by default, right? And when you build a company like that, you get tired as an entrepreneur, and at some point you give up, and you sell out or you go away, right? And you can never make it to that scale, above 5 million, above 10 million. It's really difficult to do. So here's how we did it at Nurse Next Door. Going back to that summer when we started to rebuild, we started with culture. I didn't care about HR classes, I didn't care about core values. We were the geeks that just said we can build businesses better through finance. what we learned was the power of culture. And you realize as you build a business, and you add 1 person and 2 people, and you get to 10 employees, and you get to 50 employees, culture is going to stop you from scaling up. And for us, we realized that when your people are just so dialed into what you do, and they know how to do things the way you want them to do, it's a magical formula. It is how you outcompete your competition. It's how you outpace them. It's how you out-innovate them. You build the best culture. And culture is not having the best office. It's not having dogs to work. All of those cool perks we hear from Silicon Valley, that is not culture. I call it cosmetic culture. Those are fun perks. They go away when the times get tough. And I can tell you when you build a business, times are going to get tough. It isn't just that joyride straight to the top. So culture is core values. You build your culture on a basis of core values. And what we did at Nurse Next Door, we became hardcore, monomaniacal about our core values. I call them hardcore values for a reason. We hire by our core values, we fire by our core values. You can be the best person in the world in your role. If you don't perfectly align with our core values, we absolutely will not hire you. And I bet if you don't align with our core values, you would actually hate working at our company. Our company isn't for everyone. It's kind of that magical formula where you wake up one day after building a company 5 years, 6 years, and it's the difference between having this really happy company with happy people and happy clients, which makes you a happy entrepreneur, and not. And so culture was the very first place we started. The second place we started was the painted picture. So we didn't want to have a team at Nurse Next Door. We now have 4,000 employees across North America. We didn't want 4,000 employees that were just kind and loving and core value driven to fit our culture. We wanted those employees to have a sparkle in their eye. When I told them what we were doing to the industry, when I told them how we were changing the way seniors are going to age forever, I wanted to see that sparkle in their eye. Because if I saw that sparkle in their eye, that is how we change things. And we call this the painted picture. It's the vivid description of what you are going to look like in the future. I learned this when I was 16. I was a hockey player. I played in the Olympic program. We were August training camp, training for the under-17 World Championships. And it was in the Canada against the Soviets. That was the big rivalry back then. And day 1 of training camp, we're all sitting in this room, and they had a team of visualization experts walked into the room, and they had us visualize ourselves on the podium, bending over and having the gold medal draped around our necks with the Soviets beside us getting the silver medal. And then the next day, they had us playing the game, the gold medal game in our heads, and what it would look like to get to that gold medal finish. And they reverse engineered the entire process back over those 2 weeks to the point where we had to visualize exactly what we had to do in practice to get us to that gold medal match. Now that's what the top athletes do. So why shouldn't building a business be exactly the same? If we don't perfectly, clearly picture exactly what our businesses are going to look like when we start to build them, how do you think we're ever going to get there? That's what we call the painted picture. So Ken and I were growing this company, and we were frustrated because no one could keep up with us. We had this big vision in our heads, but no one got it. And we were frustrated because we kept asking ourselves, what if we could just get all of our employees into our heads, into those crazy heads of an entrepreneur? What if they could understand what we want and what we want to build? So this is what we did. We took a day and we picked a time 10 years out, and we said, what do we want to look like in 10 years? What do we want our customers to be saying about us? What do we want our services to look like? What do we want our culture to be like? What do we want our office to look like? What do we want our uniforms that our caregivers will look like? How many pink cars do we want across North America? How many offices and where? And we wrote it in crystal clear detail. And what the result was this picture, and we had it in words. This was an 8 by 6 foot poster on our wall in the middle of our office. And an amazing thing happened when we started to do that. All of our employees started to galvanize around the painted picture of what we wanted as entrepreneurs. And every picture had a strategy reverse engineered back to today. So this isn't just throwing pictures up on a wall. This was our 10-year plan. And I'll tell you the effect of this and why the painted picture is so powerful. First of all, this is how you're going to get to where you want to go. If you don't do this, you probably are going to look far different than what you think today. But here's the thing. As an entrepreneur and as a leader, you get really busy. And you may have this vivid description in your head of what you want your company or your service or your product to look like, but it goes away and it gets lost because you don't have time to do it. So last summer, in our new painted picture, it's a book, by the way. This was our old painted picture. We now have a book. And every employee gets it. As soon as they're hired, they get the book and they read a vivid description of what we were going to look like in the future. And I walked into the office one day last summer, and I heard somebody singing happy birthday to a client. Now picture our offices. We have probably 70 people in a big call center. We do all of the logistics for all 85, 90 locations across North America. So we have this big call center, big screens on the wall. And I heard happy birthday being sung. Like, that is so cool. And I looked up on the wall and we had these big screens full of data. And there was a little happy birthday screen with all the client birthdays. We have thousands of clients, by the way, all of the birthdays today. And what was cool about that was when we wrote the painted picture, I wrote one line in to say, I want to sing happy birthday to all of our clients every single day. And it was one of those pieces of information that I don't have time. I'm dealing with much bigger things. I didn't have time to say, architect our service to say that's what we want. Somebody read the painted picture. And they just went and built this system. And that's what happens when you get your vision on paper and you get your teams completely inspired around your painted picture. They start doing things without you asking them to do it because they know what you want in your brain. Finally, as an entrepreneur, having a painted picture prevents you from lurching from crisis to crisis to crisis, because you will. When you become an entrepreneur, it's all about crisis. That's your life. And if you don't know this clearly and you don't look at it every single day, you will wake up and you will be a very different entrepreneur and you will be a very different company. And number three, the third thing we did at Nurse Next Door that really made us who we are today, I call it core purpose, your why, call it passion, I don't care. Become obsessed with what you do. Do not, I won't say that. I'll challenge you if you design some app that you think is cool that you don't really care about. Building a company, you have to be obsessed about it. You have to be purpose-driven. We call it the why. Why you do what you do beyond just making money. And it's powerful. It's one of the most secret little weapons that no one talks about in business. Because if you can figure it out, it is going to get you through the thick and the thin, right? It is going to make you great someday. I learned this from Jim Collins. I got to have lunch with him 4 years ago. And I said to Jim, I had lunch with him, I said to Jim, okay, talk to me about purpose. I get purpose, I know purpose, but what's the outcome? Why do companies really perform better when they have their purpose figured out? Jim Collins is pretty cool. He's a very, right, he's like a scientist in business. He's quantified, he actually studied every company in the world to figure out what makes them great. So he thinks, he goes, well, when I wrote Built to Last, which is his first book, I did that research in the 80s, and out of the 25 companies that made Built to Last, 18 of them still exist today, almost 40 years later, in the same name, same size, same shape. And he said that is unheard of. 18 out of 25 companies, they didn't get acquired, they didn't sell out, they didn't go bankrupt, they beat every recession. And he said they made it because they had one thing that was different from all of their competitors. They had purpose. They woke up every single day when the times were tough, and they had something bigger to fight for. When you have purpose, when you stand for something greater than just making money, you fight in a very different way. Your leaders, your teams, yourself as an entrepreneur, you wake up and you fight, and you fight, and you fight, and you get through those times. It isn't about hitting. For these companies, those great companies, it isn't about hitting and beating their competitors the next quarter in the results. Right? They don't beat them every quarter in the results, but what happens when you have purpose, you endure. And over time, you become greater than all of those other companies, and Jim Collins proved this. Those companies and those entrepreneurs who stand for something greater become greater. And I'm telling you all of this for a reason. Whether you know this or not, if you become an entrepreneur, you are about to embark on this crazy roller coaster of a ride. And you are all in one stage right now. We call you uninformed optimists. You're at the beginning of the roller coaster ride, and you think it's going to be this straight up rocket ship ride, and you think you're going to make millions of dollars in the next couple of years, and it's all going to be great. And you have to think that way, or half of you probably would never start companies. So this is exactly where you need to be. By the way, if you come to me with your business plan, or you go to a venture capitalist, we will advance your time frame by at least a year and divide your numbers by 10. Not 10%, by 10, because we know it's going to take you longer than you think. A lot longer than you think. So you start up on the roller coaster, and you ultimately get to the top. And it might be 6 months from starting a company, it might be 4 years, like we did at Nurse Next Door. But the laws of nature kick in, and you have to come down the roller coaster. The next stage, second stage, once you pass the uninformed optimist, you become the informed pessimist. You now are having problems in your company. Your teams have left because it's taking too long. Your product didn't work. Your customers didn't like it. Doesn't matter what happens, something will happen. You still are going to change the world. You just think it's going to take longer now. And of course, the laws of nature keep happening and gravity happens. And you go down to the bottom. And every roller coaster has a bottom. And you get to that bottom of the roller coaster. And that's what we call the meaning of crisis. And you only have two options at the meaning of crisis. You either crash and burn, which means you shut the shop down, you no longer exist, or you make it. And at that meaning of crisis, at the bottom of the roller coaster, I don't know if anyone's ever experienced that. If there are any entrepreneurs in this room, I can tell you it isn't fun. You go night after night after night, and you don't sleep. And you're not excited anymore. It's fear. And you don't sleep, and by the third night, you wake up, and you lean over the bed, and you have dry heaves. Because you don't know how you are going to face the next day. Every entrepreneur will go through this. The tough ones, the ones who build resilience into their organizations, who build that foundation of culture and core values and purpose, they make it through it. And you get to that fourth stage. Now that you're the informed optimist. You now are going to conquer the world again, but now you know it's going to take a long time. And then you press repeat, and you go through it again. Sometimes this roller coaster, Thursday night, you're at the top. By Monday morning, you're at the bottom. It's a manic, wild ride, but it's an amazing journey. And I can remember back 2 years ago, so I've hit this bottom a few times in building Nurse Next Door over 13 years, okay? 2 years ago was my last time. So we had expanded internationally. We'd sunk a couple of $1 million into our expansion. This is our own money. Our houses are on the line. These are the dividends that my family lives on. And it wasn't working. And not only was it working, it was starting to impact the rest of our company. One of my board members said we have to pull out and stop. And I had those 5 nights of sleepless nights because as an entrepreneur, we want to figure it all out ourselves. And I sat on my couch for 5 nights in a row without sleeping, trying to figure out how we were going to get out of this mess. And by the 5th day, I went into the office, and my leadership team, pulled me aside and said, "John, let us in. We want to know what's going on." And it's the power of culture, right? When you go through these dips, you need people around you, you need teams that will pull you out. And what my team realized, they wanted to be part of it. They wanted to know my struggles and my problems. They wanted to know that my house was on the line. And I was fearful, and I was scared. It was amazing because they had to work doubly as hard for the rest of the year just to pull ourselves out of it. And every one of them came to me and said, we're sticking with you. We will not leave until we see this through. They actually believed in the painted picture. I didn't. I lost it. My team did. I can talk about it now because 2 years later, that division will be about a $12 to $14 million a year division this year. And it will probably double every year for the next 5 years. It's our fastest growing division in the country, in the world. So here's what building a company is like. This is Paul Graham, founder of the Y Combinator, one of the famous incubators. Running a startup is like being punched repeatedly in the face, right? But here's the thing. I know, I can see it. There are people like me sitting in these seats in this room. You can't do anything but be an entrepreneur. I can't do anything else. I've never done anything else, and I know you're sitting there too. And so even though we sign up for this, even though it feels like we repeatedly get punched in the face when we start and build our companies, There's no other way, because for us, working for a large company is like being waterboarded, right? And that comes, and it's so true. We can't do anything else. So, we're here for the next 36. Man, if you're gonna become entrepreneurs, you're in college right now. I became an entrepreneur during college, and that's all I've ever done. If I could have gone to a program like the next 36, if I could have actually learned this stuff, it would have made this journey of an entrepreneur so much easier. I would be even further ahead from where I am today. And I can tell you this, because I built a company to become great, right? Because I wanted to stick it out and endure the test of time and build a resilient organization, I can tell you this, the entrepreneurs who do that are the happiest entrepreneurs. We're happy. It's not all about the money. We find happiness in being entrepreneurs, and there's no other way for us. So thank you, and good luck with this program and becoming an entrepreneur.